democracy to see the people were empowered to share their truth. Their voices no longer stifled, reclaimed their power. Join the media revolution now.
Old and fat.
Hope everybody's doing okay. Had a decent Memorial Day. You know, I don't know about you, Steve, but I don't know. I mean, yeah, I care, you know, soldiers, all that, you know, credit to them. But I have a hard time lately celebrating American holidays because America's so fucked up. I don't know about you, especially 4th of July when you're supposed to like, oh, you know, America's super duper awesome and blah, 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 blah. But like, essentially, we're living in a Hunger Games that continues to get worse as the neoliberals eat our cake.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, once, you know, I read Howard Zinn's book, History of the United States, and I think that book in and of itself, if most leftists have read it already, but for those who have not read Howard Zinn, you want to learn how to really, really hate your holidays, read that book. That book will expose all the pus and the underbelly of what we're dealing with. And it's impossible to celebrate a lot of these holidays. In fact, I feel really badly because I don't want to cringe, but every time I see somebody drive around with a flag hanging off their F-150, I literally have like just like a natural revulsion because it's like so brain dead. But yeah, this is what we're going through, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, we'll talk about YouTube and other things later, but to me, we've had the media essentially looking for what is their identity in a post-Trump world. We've seen CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, essentially kind of continue just to look back at January 6th, continue to, you know, focus on that, whether, you know, the fight over the commission, all these things. I've said, you know, I'm for a commission. It's fun, you know, great. I don't think it needs to, you know, it merits 24/7 media coverage. And other than that, you know, a little coverage on the mass shootings, not exactly challenging politicians per se, just covering it. But they're not really talking about the economic elephant in the room. Obviously, Biden and the Democrats totally fooled you on, oh, coronavirus treatment's going to be free. You don't have to pay for it. Biden said that during the Democratic primary. We're seeing more and more horror stories out there where people are, you know, $1 million bills in the hospital from being hospitalized. But now that the pandemic's kind of overish, the eviction moratorium is over in just a few weeks at the end of June. Every state is different. Some states have longer moratoriums, but the federal eviction moratorium, which is really what landlords have to are supposed to oblige by, is over at the end of June. CNBC article here says basically you have, let me show it on my screen. You have more than 11 million people. Let me know if you're seeing that, Steve.
I got it.
More than 11 million Americans are behind on their rent, and many could be pushed from their homes when the national eviction ban expires in June. This is the CDC's moratorium, which has been in effect since September, which will lift on June 30th. The policy has been far from perfect at keeping renters housed. It's reduced the normal number of evictions filed over the same time period. Experts say the number of evictions could skyrocket when the ban lifts. Around 15% of adult renters are not current on their housing payments, according to an analysis by the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. Quote, "We're going to see what we've been managing to stave off. This wave of evictions that is just going to crush some of these areas," said John Pollack, coordinator of the National Coalition for a Civil Rights Council. And, you know, we have had, Steve, dating back all the way to the first coronavirus stimulus, rental relief that was supposed to go directly to tenants and landlords. But as many outlets, well, not many, but few outlets have reported, it was designed as a bureaucratic nightmare, just like the state unemployment systems have been designed. So if you look at, and this is from Vox, you know, credit to these outlets who have, you know, the few outlets that have been reporting on the looming evictions. If you look at Vox, let's look at just the distribution of this. Here. Georgia's Department of Community Affairs told me that it has distributed more than $4 million in rental assistance funding to landlords and tenants. The state has received over $552 million.
Oh, wow.
$552 million. They've doled out $4 million. Delaware, Joe Biden's neighborhood there, State Housing Authority said it distributed 40,000, 0.02% of its allocated funds. Idaho Housing and Finance Association, 6.1 million of the 175 million they've received. Colorado, 2.8 million has been approved from the 247 million it received. Arizona shows 4.38 million has been sent out, 289 million it received. Where the hell is this money going, Steve?
Man, that's worse than I even thought. I almost wish you didn't show me that, man. This makes it worse because what you've got is not necessarily a Biden. He hasn't sent money out there. It's there. They're not distributing it. So that's a distribution problem at the edge, at the local level. So, I mean, somebody's screwing up at the federal level. They need to be auditing the shit out of this, and they need to be making sure that those payments get out to Jane and Joe Q Public. Because I can tell you right now, people I know, they're biting their nails like you wouldn't believe. As soon as they started opening up the economy, as soon as you started seeing the people taking their masks off, the meat grinder began. And this is just the next phase, and it is going to be brutal. And it isn't just renters, man. You got mortgage people too that were in forbearances, you name it. And the tsunami is going to be epic. And unfortunately, as you know, many people, when Joe Biden finally accepted the nomination, went back into hibernation for another 4 years. So the numbers that we need, the people that we need to push this forward, we have trimmed that number way down because we thought it was better to have a frenemy than a straight up enemy. And here we go.
Absolutely. And I should have said at the beginning, please smash the like button. Ladies and gentlemen, and Steve and I will touch on it a little later. I've been doing YouTube for 6 years. We have never, ever been this suppressed. It's like they've pulled a lever to just strangle the hell out of us. We've been getting like 108. We have 118,000 subscribers. We're lucky if we pass 1,000 views on short videos, live streams, same thing. Very suppressed audience. So I need you to smash the like button. Even if you don't like me, fake it. I need you to press the share button. Even create custom posts on your Twitter, Facebook, everywhere. That we're live with Steve. Honestly, I don't know the answer, but we're being really, really suppressed. I have a running email chain with YouTube that maybe I'll put into a book one day because it's so ridiculous. They're BS rationalizations. And also, frankly, because of the suppression, we're hurting financially. Please support us in the super chat. You could also support us, statuscoup.live. Statuscoup.live. We're now integrating Streamlabs. So statuscoup.live. Colin's not around to do the back end right now, but you could donate there. Any amount makes a big difference. Roseanne, thanks for the $5. Let us share what MSM won't. So I want to ask you, Steve, first of all, we'll get to kind of this audit and the bigger scam of just because the government says it's sending money towards things doesn't mean the money actually goes to that. That's why in the HEROES Act, when they said we desperately need money for state and local governments, I said, well, pause for a second. I could tell you, go ask the people of Flint. 180 million went towards relief the people of Flint. Go ask the people of Flint how much of that money actually went to them. Okay, that is one of the biggest scams of neoliberal administrative state. They earmark money towards X, Y, and Z, and it usually does not go and towards the recipients. It ends up being diverted to donors, NGOs, nonprofits, real estate. I digress. But I wanted to ask you, Biden has power as the president. He could do an executive action tomorrow to say you cannot be evicted in any state due to hardship from coronavirus and have a program in place to not like direct payments for tenants and landlords, because not every landlord is Goldman Sachs. You have, normal everyday people that need to pay their mortgages that rent. So he has the power, but there's been no talk among Biden, the Democratic Party. It's all been about moratoriums, but I always said, what happens when the music stops?
Yeah, we're all sitting out. We're on the outside looking in, man, and your life is literally in someone else's hands. In this case, they're not talking about it, and you can see how quickly the Medicare for All conversation stopped happening. You can see that student debt stopped happening. All these things that directly help regular people stopped happening, and the reason why Biden is not doing any executive order towards whether it be student debt relief or mortgage moratorium, like fixing that shit, the arrears on that and getting the rent right, is because it directly affects people. And that is not what his game is. His game is to directly help businesses. And then if it helps people through trickle down, then so be it. But he's not going to trickle it up. He's going to literally always trickle it down. And as you've seen, that money doesn't make it where it's supposed to go to. And there's no, in fact, I think they even completely had it written in that there would be no oversight. There would be no audit in the initial Corona stuff that Trump put forward. So you can expect that same level of non-transparency to continue as people literally end up jumping out of freaking roofs and jumping out of buildings because they don't know what to do with themselves. Life gets pretty hopeless when you don't have any cash and when you're fucked like this. Excuse my French.
No, it's okay. Rob, thanks for the super chat, $5. Thanks for having Steve on, Jordan. Hashtag real progressives, hashtag status coup. Yes. And honestly, independent media needs to do a lot more together because we're being strangled to death.
Yes, we do.
So
absolutely.
I know a lot of people are hurting. If you got anything, drop it in the super chat or statuscoup.live. By the way, tomorrow, I'm just confirming it, but tomorrow I'll be back in the field covering, guess what? Amazon is already union busting attempts to unionize in Staten Island, where Christian Smalls was originally fired. I'll be there interviewing Amazon workers who are speaking out. They've literally put up a fence. Talk about build the wall. They've put up a fence outside the Amazon Staten Island warehouse to basically prevent any union activity or union rallying. It's quite the scene. So I'm going to go there tomorrow. I'm just confirming with the people I'll be interviewing. That will be around 4:00 Eastern. So, call me old fashioned, Steve. I know we live in the United Corporations of America, but shouldn't there be some attention paid or coverage of that this was a pandemic and there's no way for people to pay the money back in a lot of cases? I think that number that CNBC is quoting, 11 million, is undercounted. I'm sure it's more than 11 million. Biden ran on, a lot of we're going to heal the world, racial, atone for our sins with Black and brown people. If you look at the communities, particularly in New York, it is Black and brown communities that have the highest eviction rates. Like, the landlords already have the eviction notices in there. They're just waiting for the moratorium to lift. So even though it's, a couple weeks towards, can't there be a pressure campaign to say, hey, I believe in modern monetary theory and I have the right guy here, but under the prism that they're talking, hey, you're getting out of Afghanistan, spend that money, pay the landlords directly for the back pay, call it a wash. We're not kicking anybody out. Can't there be a pressure campaign among progressives?
Well, I got to tell you, the problem with the idea of a progressive campaign is that you can see clearly most progressives don't talk to MMT people. They just don't. They literally don't. Hey, I got an economist over here. He said what I wanted to hear. So, hey, that's enough for me. They're not listening. They don't want to hear the bad news, the good news. They don't want to hear the solutions. And I'm not sure whether it's just hey, this is a new paradigm. I'm not used to it, so I can't hear that. Or if it's somebody has perverted their minds to believe that somehow or another we're not giving you the straight skinny. But the fact of the matter is that every single one of these things Joe Biden has been advised of, I guarantee has been advised of by people like Kelton and the others on that transition team, that he can go big and go big often. And he could, in fact, do these things. So I know he knows he could. I know he knows he could on the student debt stuff as well. I know he knows these things, but he's choosing not to because politically, ideologically, he is a neoliberal. He is a Wall Street guy. And the people that are surrounding him are Wall Street people. And so the idea, again, in any way, shape, or form of direct payments to people is the last thing he wants to do. And unfortunately, getting progressives to agree on whether the sky is blue or purple is like almost a bridge too far right now. Too much division, too much insane division. And so putting a pressure campaign on, maybe a small cadre of people that are, ready to take it on. But a lot of folks, the minute you tell them something that their ears don't want to hear, it's done. There's no chance of getting together and making people work together in that way. We're seeing this with the state-by-state Medicare for All fight, trying to explain the difference between a currency issuer and a currency user, and their heads are exploding, and we're bad guys, we're right-wingers, we're naysayers, blah, blah, blah. So when you look at something as important as rent and mortgage relief and debt relief, getting progressives to agree on how to solve that problem, they think they woke up at a Holiday Inn, and so now all of a sudden they know economics. And unfortunately, that's literally what we're up against right now in terms of getting any kind of motion in the field, in the street, you name it. It's going to be a real challenge.
Right. And let me know if the audio is okay. I saw a few comments. Sounds good to me, but let me know in the audience. Thank you. VA from New York, $20. Come here, Steve, on a federal job guarantee panel next Saturday. Woohoo! Lefters Fireside Forum hosted by Real Progressives and United Left.
Yes.
That's a hot
Let
ticket.
me jump in on that real quick, because they want you, sir, to see if you can be one of the guys that can do Q&A. I'm on that panel, and I'm trying to get as many of you guys out there with us as well. So hats off to United Left and RP's collaboration. It should be a great panel discussion. Jordan, please, if you can. Come.
Is it virtual or?
It's virtual. No, absolutely virtual. Absolutely.
I'll see after this.
Well, I'll make sure you get the deets offline.
Okay. Thank you, Vicky. $10. I love when Status Coup teams up Real Progressives. Steve Grumbine. Thanks, Jordan. Hashtag MMT. Hashtag each one teach one. I appreciate that. Well, there's another part of this. They're already starting the campaign for the midterms. And
it's over now. It's distraction city. We won't hear anything substantive for the next 2 years because of it. Done.
Right. So basically, if you're already campaigning, hold on a second.
We won't hear anything substantive for the next 2 years because of it. Done.
Right. So basically, if you're already campaigning for the midterms, the DNC trying to rake in, billions of dollars, obviously, the DCCC, the Senate fundraising arm, all these things. Well, you kind of need your Wall Street donors. You kind of need your real estate donors, your financial lawyers, and they are all invested in these properties of getting that rent collected. You already have, maybe not for the Democratic Party, but we see one of the remaining Koch brother is buying up all these properties. A lot of banks have preemptively bought up properties, waiting for when this moratorium is up so they could just kick people out and jack up prices. So Biden, with all his sloganeering, bottom line, he is basically at the mercy of the neoliberal financial machine. And if he hurts his donors, he's not gonna, he's gonna jeopardize the Democratic Party, who's already on that thin line. They have a 1-seat majority in the Senate, and looks like they might lose the Senate and the House.
Yeah, Joe Biden is part of that. He's not at their mercy. He's part of that. And that's the thing. He's been part of that. And he's not just been part of that. I mean, the man is now president of the United States because of his good service to that Wall Street community. Okay. That's Joe Biden's special calling card right there, is that nothing will fundamentally change. And he meant that right there to Wall Street executives, that they don't have to worry about a thing. And he's proven them right. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of spending being proposed right now. But if you'll notice, this is not about direct payments to people. This is about payments at the top. So I think that it's one of those situations where you're going to end up stuck with Biden saying, oh, I don't know what I can do differently. My hands are tied. Mansion this, somebody that. It's always an excuse waiting to happen. But the reality is he doesn't want to do it. He doesn't want to do it. It's not who he is. It's not how he thinks the economy should work.
Right.
So,
and something that I wanted to talk to you about also, part of why this, and we see this over and over again, part of why this is being allowed to just be ignored, which is human suffering. That's what this is going to be, mass human suffering, is we already have the framing, CNBC, CNN, all of this, that the economy is roaring back, the economy is rebounding, all of this stuff. Well, as you and I have talked about, yeah, jobs are coming back, but these are not, vibrant, jobs. Most of the jobs coming back are your typical paycheck to paycheck jobs, a lot of, non-living wage jobs. Jordan, speaker is echoing through the mic. Huh. Hold on. 1 2 1 2 1 2. I don't know.
You sound good.
I sound all right?
You sound all right. Right now you did. There was some echo, but you're good now. Oh, okay. I heard it there.
Let me see something. 2 2 2. How about now? 1 2.
Let's see. Let's talk. I see. I hear it in the background when we talk at the same time. It's okay.
Okay.
I don't think you're going to fix it right now.
I'll figure it out for next time, folks. Sorry about that. So, to me, why is it at the end of the day, why is it that you basically have this framing that the economy is roaring back, which ignores the underlying numbers that most of the jobs coming back are service sector, restaurants, bars, this and that, and the small wage increases that we have seen have been because of the unemployment allowing workers to stay home. I don't buy into the Republican framing that, the workers don't want to come back and they're lazy, but it has given workers more leverage to choose and not go back to jobs that aren't paying a living wage. Once the unemployment is up, we're back to essentially surface level numbers that CNBC says is wonderful, but are non-living wage jobs.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I'm going to take it back a couple steps further. One of the big things is all of the states have been starving for tax revenue because the states themselves are highly dependent on tax revenue. And with so many people out of work, states have resorted to a number of shady ways of gaining revenue. One of them is, in fact, inflating property values so they can get higher tax yields out of the property values. They've been doing a lot of things because the states are dry right now. And so with the states being dry, the federal government's got to spend money back into the economy very quickly, or you're going to have a lot of long-term, very, very negative results within that, within each local community. And I think it's only going to get worse, Jordan, to be perfectly honest with you. The value of jobs when you're making $0 and then suddenly you're making $30,000 because you just got hired. I mean, that's a $30,000 per person swing for somebody who went from zero to a $15 an hour job. And that's all that is I think it's 30 or 33,000 a year is $15 an hour. So this spike in whatever is the net average, and it's looking at those increases. I think that's really what it comes down to. And it isn't going to last for long. Even if it does, it's just making up for what was lost. And it's not even really doing that. It's just getting us back to neutral. If that, it's still negative. So it's very unfortunate because no, the jobs themselves are not great. They're not permanent. They're a lot of gig work. And those people, once the unemployment checks stop, and once the moratorium ends, we are heading for tsunami, econo apocalypse for a lot of people on the margin right now.
And by the way, do you have me on playback by you?
No. I think I have headphones on.
Yeah, so do I. I have my eye.
So it's so weird. No, because I mean, I've just got this right here, just my SM7B.
Yep. We'll figure it out for next time. Sorry, folks. Hopefully you could hear somewhat. Smash the like button. I don't have Colin around or else he'd be troubleshooting it. But smash the like button. We got 250 people watching. I think you could hear us for the most part. We'll smooth it out for next time. To me, Steve, at the end of the day, I mean, this is kind of the country we live in. We're basically living in a caste system where you essentially, even despite a pandemic, essentially, it doesn't matter what the case is. There is no human decency left. There is no politicians. There is no politicians that are demanding and fighting for what is right. It is wrong to toss people out on the street who lost their jobs because of a pandemic that they had nothing to do with. But we have a Democratic Party pretending that it's building back better and the soul of America. You got Biden in Tulsa today pretending, he's going to do something about race relations when, he's done a lot that has harmed race relations. And the other thing is, to me, all these people that are going to be evicted, all these people that are basically up Schitt's Creek. I mean, what happens to these people? You want to talk about expanding the opioid epidemic. You want to talk about suicides. You want to talk about, I was just in San Francisco at the end of my honeymoon, and it was a way worse problem with homelessness than even 3 years ago when I was there. You're basically going to have human beings throughout the country living on the streets with their families, yet the Democratic Party is going to be pushing in front of your face Marjorie Taylor Greene, Trump's threats of a coup as the biggest threat. It just seems to me there is no actual urgency, and there's a lot of gaslighting going on that this is okay.
Yeah, all this Republican pointing thing. I mean, you go back to when Donald Trump was not even elected yet, and they had already started this plan because it was the only way to give cover to Hillary Clinton's piss poor campaign. And that Russia stuff and all the other gaslighting to keep us focused on anything other than Julian Assange's leaked emails that showed how bad they are. And it's just been a nonstop charade to keep us distracted from these things. And right here, right now, I fully expect, I don't know how they'll do it. As bad as Trump is, I fully expect them to somehow or another find a way to make this a finger pointing session with the Republicans. Why all these people are homeless? Why all these people are struggling, etc. I fully expect that 100%. I don't think that they're going to change, and it's a shame because you're looking around, you're like, yo squad, yo progressive caucus. The Progressive Caucus, Pramila Jayapal gave Joe Biden like an A+ rating for his first 100 days. Now, as Mike Figueredo said, he was like, you can't get a more whacked rating from somebody who's supposed to be the opposition to corporate Democrats and Pramila Jayapal. But instead, she's given the man an A+ rating. So that tells you all you need to know about the squad and about the Progressive Caucus in terms of fighting back against Biden's inaction, ineffectiveness, and unwillingness to spend money at the bottom up. And they're silent. They're dead silent, and they're focusing on new subjects, and none of those subjects amount to somebody staying in their home. Unfortunately, they don't give a shit.
Can you talk about, from an MMT point of view, how easy and how simple would it be to just directly pay landlords for whatever back pay is owed, as well as for a lot of people who have been able to pay their rent but have accumulated debt elsewhere? How would that work out? What would be the mechanism where tenants could stay and direct payment would come?
Yeah. So from an MMT perspective, these are the most boring conversations. People like, is that all? Is that the end of the conversation? It really is this simple. I mean, Joe Biden can either write an executive order that staves off any of these things. He could write an order saying, period, no, there will be no rent checks from the people. They won't have to pay back debt or whatever. He won't do that. From a congressional perspective, they were to pass a law. All they have to do is vote yes, and the money is spent into existence, every bit of it. We talked about this with Pavlina Tcherneva about a right to a job during the pandemic and nationalizing payroll to keep everyone home and paid and to keep those businesses flush so that when we did land back down and reopen, that nobody would be in a hole. Nobody wanted to hear that. And I think, quite frankly, it's just that simple. It really is pass a bill, spend the money into existence, done. It's that done. but it's so easy that people's heads explode when you say it. It really is that simple. There is nothing whatsoever preventing them from doing even more than what we're talking. We're like groveling at this point. Like, please just give me some Skittles. Please just give me a chunk of dial. Please. I mean, we're begging, and they're giving us absolutely nothing. So it just shows you from, we could do so much. I mean, outrageous. We could pay people's houses off if we wanted to. But instead, we're not going to do anything. So it's, from an MMT perspective, this is super brutal, because you know how absolutely simple it would be to solve, and it's not happening. It's not going to happen either.
And somebody just asked, well, what about the inflation if you were to do that?
What inflation would that be about? I'm curious. What inflation? I have no idea.
Well, the old Chamber of Commerce, Lauren Summers,
right.
fear-mongering that just spending until you're drunk or whatever would create inflation. But I don't know. Isn't gentrification creating inflation a lot more than federal spending is?
Absolutely. In fact, I mean, see, what happens is this. I will say this.
Real quick.
Spending.
Real quick. Smash that like button. We almost have 300 people watching, but I need more people to press the like button and share this live stream. Go on.
Yeah, whenever you spend money, okay, money spent, that's a flow. And so whenever you spend money on things, yes, you can create inflationary conditions. There's no question about it. Having money growth and having money spent on different things will in and of itself not necessarily cause inflation. It's just a distribution thing when you've got everybody having more money and suddenly they're able to do more with it. It's not necessarily that there's all this money. It's about how many people have that money and how much demand they have inside themselves that they'd like to exact with that money. But in this case, what we're talking about is just making sure that the old debt doesn't come and bite these people in the butt. We're not talking about giving them new money. We're basically saying that money that you were afraid, that was going to hit you, we're not going to let it hit you right now. And so it's really, in essence, just making the landlords whole. So there's a little bit of a problem there as well, if you think about it. Hold on one second. Cammie, go out there. Do not come back in here, Butterfish. Going out there. Pandemic living, man. My son. Here, come say hi to everybody real quick, and then you got to go bye-bye, okay? Come say hi.
Hi.
That's Cameron.
Hey there.
So Cameron's a superstar. Love you, buddy. Now going out there. Do not come back in. Shut the door behind you. Thank you. Love you.
What a cutie.
Hey, man, it's better than saying, get out. Take it as it comes with.
Keep those super chats coming in for Steve's wonderful kid.
Yeah.
By the way, Steve, I forgot to mention, talking about a scam and an audit, the New York Times reported California has only paid out $1 million of $355 million requested by tenants and landlords. So, I don't believe we should have done it this way in the first place. We should have done direct stimulus like a debit card, UBI, whatever you want to call it, to tenants rather than 500 different programs. If you read in Vox and other places, half the time people don't even know it's available to them. Half the time people don't know when the deadlines are. They miss the deadlines. The applications are shut down. But where is all this money that was spent? You only hear, and the campaign ads will be out there. We acted swiftly. Democrats, under Biden gave $25 billion in rental assistance. You're not going to see the headlines. Apparently, most of it went into an empty vault, or now a full vault. The money has not been distributed. And, there's no talk about it. There's no calls for an audit. There's no calls for, if the money hasn't been distributed, maybe we should just switch it up right now and just give the money straight to the people.
So let me ask you a question, and I'll be perfectly honest with you. I don't know the answer to this question I'm about to ask you. When it comes down to the money, is this money that was earmarked for these locations that is only spent as needed, or is this money that was literally sent to these jurisdictions and is sitting there that they then distribute? That's a logistical question I don't know.
Most of the examples I just read to you have already been sent.
That's ridiculous.
But not distributed. So there's just money just sitting there. Yeah, the states were focused on the actual pandemic and lowering the cases and stopping the spread and all that. But, states have treasury departments too. States have, financial departments. It just seems like a lot of these programs, including unemployment, by the way, are designed to fail. And yeah, you could say, well, maybe Biden did do his job and the money went out. No, not if it's a fucking a disastrous maze that people can't get the money. And I just say, I think these programs are intended to fail.
I want to tell you something super important. To me, this is the most important. Most folks, I hope, if you can ride with me just for a second to get through this, I promise you this is going to start making some sense. If you look at like Detroit, Michigan, before Flint's water problem even, okay, Flint had been really in receivership. They had been taking the important museum artifacts and all the history of Detroit and literally selling it off for piece parts to try and make up for their debts. You have that same exact scenario going on in Puerto Rico. You have Pittsburgh back in the day when the steel mills shut, that was a complete rust town. You have Buffalo, same exact thing, and you've got the entire Rust Belt where jobs have left, businesses have left, and all you have is people sitting there like fish on the shoreline, flapping away, getting ready to die in the sun. And that right there is called the race to the bottom, where states like Texas and states like Kansas will lure these businesses down. Why does this all matter right here, right now, with what we're talking about? Most states have been literally robbing Peter to pay Paul to try and stay solvent. They've got their pension funds going on. You got places like Pennsylvania that are stuck with this Marcellus Shale company doing fracking to try to pay for public services. So, flash forward to a pandemic, you've got these big monies being spent to the states, being handed to them, and these states are saying for the last 40 years, you have starved us with austerity. Our roads are falling apart. If you do just a basic cursory review of state and local bridges, they're all rated like C and D. They're not even, many of them are take your life into your own hands. And not to be too, hyperbolic, but our whole infrastructure from our energy grid, you name it, has fallen apart because states have been highly dependent on tax revenues to survive. And you look at the school systems even. The school systems are dependent on those rich people that live in their jurisdiction and the taxes that they pay. Well, what happens when you don't have those revenues coming in? These states are screwed. So the minute you put that money there, if it wasn't encumbered with an exact, it must go here or you don't get it. And they did not do that. In fact, that was one of the big things, was that they could spend that money and there would be no accountability. But without encumbering those dollars to make those states do, you must provide housing relief with this 50 million. You must provide healthcare with this 25 million, whatever. If they're not going to physically audit that and make that happen, it will not happen because the states are literally belly up. And I can tell you right now, in Pennsylvania, where I'm from, you've had a $600 million shortfall for the state. And they're like, what do we do? We don't know what to do. How do we raise taxes? What do we do? And the schools are falling. There's so much decay as a result of the states not having enough revenue from taxes. And so this is where the federal money, we really need to focus on where the money comes from. It's not the states, it's the federal government. And without that constant infusion from the federal government, the states are left to make a lot of bad choices. And when you have things that could benefit the people, like helping them out with their mortgage or their rent, that doesn't necessarily compute when they've been sitting there taking out bonds and everything else to keep government funded and flowing and keep roads so that they're drivable. And they're like, hey, you know what? We're going to go ahead and take that money and we're going to use it for these other things that have been bankrupting the state now forever. And so this is the real story. And I hope folks pay attention to that race to the bottom, because it's also the thing that's going to stand in the way of people trying to get state-based Medicare. And there's a lot of folks out there with good hearts and good intentions, but are absolutely economically illiterate and do not understand the implications of making such a move. That race to the bottom, folks, it is very real. Remember Rick Perry raising his hand, bragging about how they were bringing businesses down to Texas? He just thought it was the greatest thing in the world as he'd steal another headquarters out of a state, and that whole tax base dries up as it leaves, and then there's Texas laughing their way all the way through. And they're still cutting their own services. In the major metropolitan areas, Texas is beautiful, but out in the suburbs, those people are living just as bad as they were in Kansas. So I think it's really important to focus on this. Is a bigger problem than just the moratorium ending and just the unemployment ending. This is the full state-based race to the bottom, and it's going to be dog eat dog, and it's going to be brutal.
And I also think something that you'll never hear on CNN, you mentioned the Flint example. When you have this race to the bottom, when you have states and cities like Flint, Detroit, Cleveland, Milwaukee broke, guess what happens? Oh, the privatization vultures come swarming in like the hyenas from the Lion King. Oh, because the states and the cities that are broke, who are they going to turn to? Oh, the private sector and public-private partnerships, which are really just window dressing for privatization. It's already happening. And, we've seen banks during this pandemic buying up a lot of these properties. And it's all happening with no progressive resistance. Bernie's asleep, always my OG. But now, what are you doing? Nothing. He huffed and puffed. I'm going to hold up aid to Israel. And then he folded like a cheap tent. AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Ayanna Pressley, Ilhan Omar, Ro Khanna, Pramila Jayapal, Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush. We got a lot of tweeting going on. No progressive resistance. Again, 4 weeks, eviction moratorium over. I'm not seeing anything from them. Biden, moonwalking on the public option. Crickets. Biden has already abandoned the $15 minimum wage, and there's no progressive resistance. And basically, the Chamber of Commerce, groups like Third Way are salivating. Third Way funded by Wall Street that, the media says is centrist, but is really radical and right wing, because this is just setting up a vacuum. The people that are going to be evicted, the states and the cities that are broke for big banks, big oil, big pharma, big real estate, Silicon Valley, to go ham.
Yeah, absolutely. Jordan, I think one of the biggest services that you provide out of all the services Status Coup does, from the in the field reporting, which I love, good on John Farina for all the work he's doing, and you and Jen and Tina Desiree Berg, etc. One of the things that is really powerful about what you do, unlike many of the other channels, is you're literally focusing on the problem at hand and how to solve it, not just whining about it, not just waxing on about it, but literally looking for solutions. And I think that's really important, because right here, right now, our movement is lost. I went back into my old photos, Google Photos, going back to 2015, 2016, and looking at all the memes and all the different things that we had going back in the day, and watching the Bernie Sanders Twitter handle that literally he was just taking no prisoners back then. It was like Wall Street banging on him, and looking at all the other progressive folks out there just banging, and then watching as they changed. Because I saved these screenshots not on purpose, but it's just the way the Google archive works on my pictures. And sure enough, you watch as they all change their tune. And I'm telling you right now, we elected these people, all those progressive names you put out there, thinking that they were going to fight for us because we had no other voice. And they have not done that. They have not done that at all. And there's a whole team of Blue Lives Matter progressives, if you will, that defend the squad from any criticism whatsoever, defend Biden from any criticism whatsoever. Instead of defending the people fighting for their very existence, they literally put the crosshairs on anyone that dares speak out against these things. And it's a real tragedy, because we're not going to see the kind of help and fix that we need. So hats off to you and Jen and the gang for actually doing meaningful investigative journalism and working on solutions. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. One of the few outlets out there that really, truly does focus on solutions. So good job, Jordan.
And speaking of being out there, tomorrow, if you guys can see it, I'll be at Amazon Staten Island warehouse. Because guess what? They're union busting there after Amazon rigged the Alabama efforts to to unionize. They are already trying to stop Staten Island in New York workers from organizing, to the point that they put up a fence. So I'll be there around 4:00. We'll be live. And that's another thing I wanted to talk about real quick, Steve. Part of what made the progressive movement, Bernie explode in 2016, AOC, this and that, was Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, independent media. But that's also being attacked right now. And I don't think a lot of people understand it, the severity. I mean, obviously we're not facing eviction physically, but Status Coup, we have 118,000 subscribers. Normally we get around 400 to 600 live stream viewers. Shorter videos, typically, 2 to 4,000. I mean, for the last few weeks, suspiciously, ever since I was on my honeymoon, but Jen covered Israel-Palestine, the war, and told the truth about what Israel was doing, all of a sudden, we were having trouble cracking like 150 live viewers. And YouTube is giving me nonsense via email that, it's, click-through rate and this and that. I'm like, no, doesn't make sense when a channel has 118,000 subscribers, and by the way, went up almost 10,000 because of John's reporting in Minneapolis and North Carolina on the murder of Dante Wright, on the murder of Andrew Brown. Doesn't make sense when you go up, you go down in views. But this is happening everywhere, and it goes to further suppressing not just my outlet and our ability to survive, but the truth about there's an eviction apocalypse coming up. The truth about the progressive movement is sleeping. The truth about these pipelines are still going in all over the country. All over the country, these pipelines are still going in. The truth about you see homelessness in LA, in San Francisco, in Portland, Seattle. I mean, the attacks on independent media are not just a media issue at this point. It's a political issue because it's further quieting the left, in my view.
Well, we have 130,000 followers on Facebook. And every time we open up our page, we've got this warning sign that tells us we are being muted because we said things that were deemed fake news. And I'm like, what fake news? I mean, we are not out there putting Alex Jones nonsense out there. We're not putting garbage out there. I mean, what are they going to do? Say economics is bullshit? Okay, maybe. I mean, they got many years of proving economics has been bullshit. But MMT is not bullshit. MMT is the antidote to that. So I don't know why they're doing that. Every time we put something about Israel or something like that up, we get the big cross through it saying this is sensitive information that people might not want to see, whatever. We're constantly getting warnings that we're going to get deplatformed and taken down if we say anything else that crosses whatever line. We don't even know what line it is, right? Over on our YouTube channel, we did it backwards. We screwed up. We focused on Facebook and said, screw YouTube. Well, YouTube over here, we got 10,000 subscribers. Please help us at Real Progress in Action. But we got 10,000 subscribers, and you could go live for 30 minutes with people that follow you. Forget if nobody else likes you, it's fine. But the people that subscribe to you aren't even getting the notifications. And we'll have 3 or 4 or 5 or 20 people max, maybe 35, something like that, watching live. And it's like, what the hell? I mean, we used to have, like on Facebook, we'd have 500, 600, 700 people live, stuff like that. Now we're lucky if we get 30 or 40. So it's absolutely insane what they've done in terms of censoring, in terms of what they've done with shutting down with the algorithms. And let me take it a step further. I didn't even cuss in my videos, and I still got the big X through the monetization. So we're not even getting monetized on a lot of our videos anymore either. So it's horrible. I don't know how we survive through this. I'm not even worried about I'm worried about the money, but I'm not as worried about the money as I am just simply, hey, I'm not doing this because I think it's a fun hobby. I'm doing this because the stuff I want to tell you I think is really important for you to hear. And when I get stifled, I get insane because that bugs me because I'm in this as an activist, not as a media person. I'm an activist first, media guy second. And it's brutal in terms of information dissemination. Absolutely brutal.
How much longer do I have with you?
We can keep going for a little bit. I mean, I don't want to. I don't want to say, "Hey, you got to cut." But I got probably 10 minutes left in me.
All right, good. So, to me, why this is so dangerous is, at the end of the day, even if we weren't being suppressed, these communities, these people facing eviction, Flint, for example, by the way, folks, we're a lot closer to publishing that upcoming Flint story that we've been telling you about. So there's progress on that. So we haven't been sitting on our hands. We're working on a major Flint follow-up, and it's something, let me tell you. But already you're not going to get major commercial media attention on these issues. You're not going to get major commercial media attention on the homelessness, on the lack of health care, on the climate catastrophe. You're going to get more Marjorie Taylor Greene, Louis Gohmert, Trump, however they can get Trump into the media. So already we're at a disadvantage, but then you add on essentially an invisible lever that's squeezing everybody, including Jimmy Dore, Kyle Kalinske, whatever. And it could wear on you. I mean, when I was going live to like 150 people last week, you start wondering like, oh, maybe there aren't as many people out there that care about these issues. It starts getting in your head when you don't realize, no, people just aren't seeing it because it's being intentionally throttled. And that's another thing I truly don't understand, particularly for the progressives in the House, Bernie, people that rose through digital media and independent media, particularly AOC, who got on the Young Turks, Jimmy Dore, and other programs, why they're not screaming about this. Because it is not just about our livelihoods. It's about progressive policies, progressive priorities, and actually developing the progressive movement. You can't build a movement if people don't know, things are on fire. you can't build them. You can't get people that aren't currently progressive interested in these issues or to learn MMT or anything if people don't see your content. I have people asking me, Jordan, where you been for the last week? Like, we were live. They don't see it. So, obviously you don't have the answers, but to me, this is a political crisis at this point.
Let me tell you something. In the chat right here, I was sitting there looking. It was all I could do not to light a firecracker on this one. But person says, hey, if you're monetized, you're not an activist. Let me tell you something. In my organization, we have 2 nonprofits. We started as just a bunch of Facebookers getting together, trying to get this message out there and realizing that we're up against incredibly well-funded, well-organized opposition, not only politically, but media-wise and business-wise and everything-wise, okay? And so when 100 volunteers get together and try and do something important, like be able to create videos and stuff like that, having to get them Adobe Creative Cloud, having to be able to get the website up and running so you can get your information out there. You need to even know what the mission statement of the organization is. And when you have that many people getting 0 paycheck, by the way, okay, 0, but putting in 80 hours a week in their craft for free, and not looking for a paycheck necessarily, looking to get the information out there. People like that, when they just come in and they go, oh, I'm going to be the Karate Kid and sweep the legs. I'm going to make some shit comment about, not being an activist. I'm telling you right now, when I sit there and I have to put my son, who y'all just saw a little while ago, when I have to put him on the corner, put him back there and get him playing or watching a show so I can do something like this, I call that a sacrifice for him and for me. And I hope it matters, right? I hope that sacrifice translates into something that changes out there, because for me, there's no money in it. It's just a matter of, and so when they stifle your voice, see, for me, it's real. I'm a real believer in what I do. The MMT stuff I talk about, I'll wake up at 3 a.m. to be on a show across the world. I'll do whatever it takes to get this message out there. And to me, to be slagged and to be stifled and to be shut down and algorithmed out of the equation is like somebody literally taking a pillow and shoving it on your face when you're sleeping at night so you can't breathe. And I hope people start really thinking about the people that they're slagging. We're working our asses off. No, I'm not looking for a pat on the back, just making the point. We're working our asses off. And we're in a field that requires money. The cameras require money. The lights require money. The freaking platforms require money. All the things you do require money.
The travel,
all of it.
In our case, we have, all due respect to you, we have a lot more overhead than anyone in our sandbox.
Oh, yeah. Just guys are out there in the field driving around, going everywhere. Absolutely. And that's my point, is that when people just don't think about the fact, Jordan, you're an activist. Everything you did for Flint, nobody else did. You weren't getting rich off of Flint. You're out there
People said I
driving
won't,
to
but
Flint,
I might.
interviewing the most vulnerable people. I call that, monetized or not, hardcore activism that you can't do. There's no glory in not having enough money to be effective. There's no glory in that. If you find glory in that, my God, help us all.
Right. Absolutely. And, to me, I think, and by the way, not to get into it, but we're currently behind the scenes talking to one platform about maybe doing some exclusive stuff for them. I won't get into it until it's done, but possibly doing exclusive stuff once a week off of YouTube. But to me, at the end of the day, people need to understand, like, we're not going to get change in this country if people don't wake up and start fighting back. And if, I'm also talking about fighting back against the progressives that are letting us down. At this point, I've never got into like sellout talk, but at this point, they are selling us out. They are selling us out because they're not fighting. I mean, I look at the tweets. They're mostly tweeting about identity bullshit, not the economic issues, which is why they got elected. And by the way, what's going on right now, what Steve and I are talking about right now, these conditions, the evictions that are coming up, nothing being done on healthcare, nothing being. When Steve goes, I'm going to tell you about Biden dodging a question whether he should apologize for the Tulsa massacre. Wouldn't answer it. You're going to get another Trump, maybe actual Trump in 2024, or a more competent loon than Trump, because this is what created Trump. The Democratic Party squandering the Obama years, not inspiring young people, basically selling a lot of woke nonsense, letting banks foreclose on people because of the financial crash. This is what created the vacuum for somebody like Trump. And the Democratic Party, they could run in the midterms. We put shots in your arms and money in your pockets. That's going to be in the rearview mirror if they don't do anything about evictions, healthcare. Biden, I'm also going to talk about this when you go. Biden is sitting here obsessed with negotiating with Republicans on the infrastructure deal, which is already woefully inadequate. I mean, I see a train wreck coming, not just for the people that are going to be tossed into the streets, not just for the people who still don't have health care, but for the Democratic Party that has an opportunity right now to cement its power.
You got it, man. You got it.
Any other parting words on MMT, evictions? The Chamber of Commerce right now is, we didn't talk about this real quick. The worker shortage, they're ranting, the Republicans, the Chamber of Commerce are ranting about the worker shortage, that it's the biggest crisis in America, when in reality, the worker shortage is just people having a little bit more leverage with the unemployment benefits to say, yeah, I'm not going to go work for $10 an hour to flip burgers.
That's it. You nailed it. I mean, that's the slam dunk. That's the answer right there. The fact is that people are not willing to put everything at stake, drive to a job, pay gas to go to a job that doesn't even pay enough to cover the gas they spent to get there. So no, they're not going to rush out the door to do that. And hats off to them. We need a job guarantee. And that, I guess my parting words would be this Saturday night, please try to be with United Left and Real Progressives for the job guarantee panel. You'll have myself, Fadl Kaboub, Eric Kessner. You'll have Jason Call from Washington on there as well. It'll be a really, really awesome opportunity to get to hear about one of the most important policies we could enact. The other thing is that we recently recorded all day for the first 5 episodes of our next season of The New Untouchables. It starts getting really ugly with the elite control fraud, and the victims of that elite control fraud will be on tap. We have an Olympic gold medalist who identity theft took away her home. It's all part of this liar's loans where houses are being taken from people left, right, and center, and it's across the entire country. And then I guess lastly, we're going to be involved at the end of July in a Medicare for All march that's going to be going on in a whole bunch of different states. Definitely start getting yourselves ready for that as well. And, follow us at Real Progress in Action. Real Progress is my podcast, Macro and Cheese. And, of course, all the other shows, Luke Parcher, Up and Up, and so forth. We
Absolutely.
really thank you for having me on, Jordan.
Thanks, man. Thanks for coming on. I'll have you again soon.
From sea to sea, the people were empowered to share their truth. Their voices no longer stifled, reclaimed their power. Join the media revolution now.